CNN Newsroom with Lynda Kinkade.
Well, horrific scenes of starvation in Gaza are prompting a shift from President Donald Trump. After mostly blaming Hamas for aid delays, he now says Israel bears a lot of responsibility. The president says the US will establish food centers in Gaza to tackle the crisis.
We can save a lot of people. I mean, some of those kids that's real starvation stuff. I see it. And you can't fake that. So we're going to be even more involved.
Well, Israel says it will continue to pause military operations in the territory for 10 hours a day to ensure safe passage of convoys delivering aid. It's also airdropping some platelets of supplies into Gaza, along with Jordan and the United Arab Emirates. Hospitals in Gaza reported another 14 deaths in the past day due to famine and malnutrition. The UN aid chief warns the next few days will be make or break for the humanitarian efforts. He says a lot of food has been trucked in this week, but a lot has been looted. Well, just a few weeks ago, we brought you the story of a mother in Gaza desperate to save her 5-month-old daughter. The baby spent the past few months in and out of hospital and was prevented from leaving Gaza for treatment. Sadly, baby Zainab passed away. And a warning, some viewers may find this report from our Nick Robertson disturbing.
Baby Zainab, cradled in her father's loving arms, fought for life as long as she could. Her tiny, emaciated body, a now silent witness to Gaza's new horror, malnutrition. Once a happy, healthy baby, dead at 5 months old. She passed away as her mother carried her to the hospital for a checkup. This is her photo before she got sick, she says, and this is the medical referral. My daughter suffered greatly from her illness, malnutrition and a lack of milk due to the closure of the crossings. A little over a week ago, CNN saw Zainab in hospital, alive.
How old is she?
She's 5 months. How much you hold? 5 months old.
And what is her weight?
This was in her.
British doctor Nick Maynard was helping treat Zainab. He was on one of his many life-saving missions to Gaza and was recording a video diary for CNN.
There have been 4 newborn babies in the last couple of weeks who've died as a direct result of malnutrition. Their mothers were too malnourished to produce milk. There are inadequate amounts of formula feed.
Zainab's wizened skin and bone body was clinging to life, and there was hope. After CNN's report, Zainab was offered a medical evacuation abroad. Her father, clutching her dead body, tells us her referral was ready and we were waiting for the crossing to open. But she found peace and rose to the heavens. We did everything we could. According to her doctors, she had no underlying medical conditions. Cases like hers increasingly common, he says.
I came to the hospital as a body because of severe starvation and unavailability of the special formula for milk that it is suitable for her. This is one of the examples for not allowing and for closing borders against milk and against special formula of milk for children.
More than 120 dead in Gaza from malnutrition, he says. 2/3 of them are children because they're more vulnerable. Israeli officials say they abide by international law, allow aid into Gaza and blame Hamas for the shortages. Baby Zainab never knew any of that, or about a ceasefire or negotiations over meters of land, or numbers of hostages and prisoners to be exchanged. She came into the world innocent and left it the same way. Her parents' lives heavier, carrying the loss and what might have been. Nick Robertson, CNN, Jerusalem.
Well, joining me now from London is Sanam Vakil, the director of the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House. Look, thanks so much for your time. That was obviously a horrific case that we just saw. Another innocent child dying of starvation in Gaza, nearly 2 years into this brutal conflict. How would you categorize what's happening to civilians in Gaza?
Thank you for having me. I have to say, this is a really shameful moment. The international community and the Israeli government are completely culpable for allowing this humanitarian catastrophe to continue. And there needs to be, above all, unity and continued condemnation and pressure put on the Israeli government and Prime Minister Netanyahu. It does work. It is working. Aid is now being, quote unquote, allowed to come in, but there is no reason, no justification whatsoever that Palestinians should be paying this kind of price, and that children should be dying and people should be suffering in this way.
Yeah, it's inexcusable, really. And Israel's prime minister insists that there is no starvation, even as the United States, which of course historically is its closest ally, disputes that. President Trump says Israel bears a lot of the responsibility for restricting aid. And the UN, of course, has pointed out that nearly a third of Gaza's population is going for days without food. Of course, when it comes to like international humanitarian law, withholding aid and starving civilians is considered a war crime. Do you believe that Prime Minister Netanyahu or members of his government could be held accountable?
Well, I think we are far beyond international law 2 years into this war. And that's one of the main problems we're facing. There's no accountability. The ICC, the ICJ have already made their verdicts about Israel and Israel's leadership, but nobody is around to enforce it in Europe, and certainly not in the United States. A positive note is that the president does see this starvation and is calling Israel out on it. And Europe, the UK, the West in general, really see President Trump as the only person that is able to pressure the Israeli government. And I sincerely hope that pressure is coming, because where we are today is unjustifiable, certainly a violation of international law. And Israelis themselves are finally calling out what could be war crimes. And we could, very much say what's happening in Gaza is, of course, reminiscent by putting Palestinians in camps, narrowing the base of where Palestinians can live, and trying to push them out. This is criminal by all accounts.
Israel right now has agreed to a limited ceasefire just to allow some aid in, but aid has often been restricted, with Israel claiming that Hamas is stealing it. We now know that a U.S. investigation found no evidence of widespread theft. And Israel certainly maintains its objectives are to defeat Hamas and bring home hostages. But has it, in your view, turned a blind eye to the humanitarian crisis? And effectively, is it punishing the entire population?
Absolutely. I think that Israel has engaged in all sorts of activities, and we've also seen over the course of the year that Israel is sort of fueling insurgency from within Gaza in the hope that protests or a public outcry against Hamas will further weaken the group that is sincerely degraded, but still present in Gaza. I think the Israeli government has to consider what its war aims are at this point. And if its international stature, the isolation, the pariah status that it currently holds, is worth continuing this. The Knesset is out of session for the next few months, and it remains to be seen if this government is going to continue to pummel Palestinians or think about returning to the negotiating table. I think so far, all of these negotiations have been very much performative, and the delivery of aid, to quote Donald Trump, has also been performative. Much more can and should be done.
And with food and medicine stuck at the border, is the international community doing enough to prevent a wider catastrophe?
Well, we're certainly seeing the international community stepping up and stepping in, dropping aid from the sky, and also lining up across the border. The UN is present, and the reality is that the Israeli government has blocked UNRWA, that has long been the sort of delivery mechanism from doing its job. There are many of aid groups. They're ready to do their job. The onus is really on Israel, and I believe that the international community must keep the pressure up on Israel. It's important to recognize Palestinian state. There is a conference taking place in New York, sponsored by France and Saudi Arabia, to think about the pathway to a two-state solution. And that's important for the longer-term horizon. That will also address Israel's security. But in the immediate, pressure and condemnation from around the world is needed, and of course, action on the ground. And here, the onus again is on Israel to understand the gravity of this moment and that it won't be able to climb down from this. People won't forget this.
Yeah. Dr. Sanam Vakil, good to have you on the program. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.